Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I'm wearing a tie.
I just noticed that, actually. Why the fuck are you wearing a tie?
I had a meeting this morning, and I wore a tie to that meeting.
I literally been talking for 45 minutes, and I literally just now noticed you're wearing a tie.
Well, the podcast mic is covering it up.
That's what it was.
Is the thing. So I shifted over to the side, and now you can actually see that I am wearing a tie. So yes, sometimes I do like semi-official things, and I like to wear a tie. I used to wear a tie to work when I was at the branch, but now that I'm in the back office, I just wear a polo shirt because I'm too lazy to put a tie on every single morning when no one's going to see me except for the same 15 people. I'm also celebrating, Bradley.
What are you celebrating?
I'm celebrating the end of our Acolyte coverage. We did it. We made it. We're done. We finished.
We have made it. And what number episode is this, Charles?
This is episode number, if I've done my math right, 200 of released Gold Squadron Gays episodes.
That's crazy.
That is wild. That is absolutely wild that we have been recording this show now for almost 4 years. And we've hit 200
sick.
Episodes.
We have a disease.
We are deeply unwell people.
I wish my life was so much easier that I didn't have to worry about stuff like this. And I could be like, I don't need to talk about Star Wars on a podcast. Like, I can just live my life without having to be like, oh, I have to share an opinion, like online.
Well, see, the problem, Bradley, is that third word in the name.
Yeah.
We are both gay men. And as gay men, we are also men. And so we have this deep compulsion to share our opinions at all times.
I know. And it was so funny because I was literally just complaining to you about how I saw on Reddit people are just constantly giving their opinions. And I'm like, you're not a critic. You're not a whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute.
You don't have the training necessary.
You don't have a podcast to be able to give your opinion. So you don't
Well, some
understand.
of the people that have podcasts do not need to be having podcasts. I'm just saying I can tell when someone has had media training versus when somebody bought a podcast microphone because their friends told them that their opinion was so informed and valuable that they just had to share it with the whole internet. I'm like, at least you and I took classes. At least you and I have formal training.
That's what I like. I like to defend
works.
sometimes. Sometimes somebody will say well, what makes you your opinion better than other people's? And I was like, I don't actually believe my opinion is better than other people's. I think that our opinion comes from a semi-informed place. So therefore, I think it has more intrinsic value than, say, someone who is just, cocklover69 on Reddit who's like, I hate the Acolyte.
That is a wild. I mean, first of all, how dare you put my Reddit username on blast like that? How dare you? But second of all, I do think, and look, I think if you're somebody who has consumed a lot of media and has learned through your own volition how to talk about media in a healthy and reasonable way, I think that's great and awesome. I know people that make content who they just started making content and they learned as they went. But these people were also recognized that they could learn and grow, recognize that it's a skill you have to hone over time. And even we were the same way. The early episodes of the show, we kind of struggled a little bit to find our footing because that's natural. I do have a lot of people in my real life that I also talk to who will get kind of uppity with me when I tell them that they're wrong about something. And they'll be like, what qualifies you to know this thing about writing? If I say this thing is objectively bad writing and you say, no, it's not, please explain, in detail, what qualifies you that? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, the multiple classes that I took on writing, the piece of paper I have that tells me that I'm qualified to know what I'm talking about when it comes to specifically TV writing. I don't know. I love my friends who are just I'm going to make a podcast and I'm going to learn as I go. And I'm also love my friends who are like, I have industry experience and I'm also going to talk. Some of my podcaster friends also have industry experience, or they have journalism experience, or they know what they're on about, or they know how to research. This is another thing that gets me about some people when it comes to their like just posting shit on the internet. I'm not even talking about content creators. I'm talking about people that post shit in Facebook comment sections that have no idea what the fuck they're on about. Learn how to Wikipedia. I'm begging you to learn how to Wikipedia. Learn how, because it's a skill you have to learn, like everything else. Learn how to search for things on Wikipedia specifically. Don't don't use Google. That is a bad SEO thing. It's going to shove some fucking Screen Rant article in your face. Learn to search Wikipedia for the actual information, because whatever else I can say about Wikipedia, and I have some criticisms of Wikipedia, they have everything documented very well. You can find the information that you're looking for on the site, and if you learn how to use it, it will help you not look stupid in the comment sections of Facebook articles. Like particularly all those fucking articles that were coming out when the Acolyte was coming out and are still fucking coming out. I'm still fucking seeing them. The Acolyte is still a profitable grift.
Yeah, I think it's the problem, and this is a great way to bring it back to the Acolyte.
I'm segueing us kind of back towards the
back
Acolyte.
to the Acolyte. It's that people, I think it's just popular to hate the Acolyte.
I
don't think it's like, I think you can have genuine criticism of the Acolyte and be like, oh, maybe the writing wasn't 100% or the acting or whatever. Like, you can criticize any aspect of any TV show anywhere. Like, it doesn't matter how good
we
a
have
show is. You can
repeatedly over this coverage.
We absolutely loved Ahsoka, and we could be like, oh yeah, there was things that I would not have done, or there's
we
writing
did this. We did do this to Ahsoka too.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you can like something and then say it has parts that need improvement. You can also not like something and say it has parts of being improvement. But what you cannot do, which is all I'm seeing, that's the problem, is people criticizing it and then just being like, it's bad because of this, therefore it has no intrinsic value. Like, it's like, no, that's just not true. Like, you can't say like all the actors are fucking terrible. Now you're generalizing. That's real. Like, you're really gonna sit there with your full chest and say Carrie Ann Moss is not a good actress? Like, I'm sorry. Like, no, you can't.
You're gonna look me in the face and tell me that Lee Jung-jae is bad at this?
No, yeah. See,
what?
That's why I'll never take those people seriously online, because it's just like, I don't know why we're already giving our like full like chest opinion of the Acolyte, but there you go. It's just that like it's good and it's fun and it's enjoyable. And is it perfect? No, because nothing is perfect. And so therefore, like, if you like the Acolyte, then continue to like it. And if you don't like the Acolyte,
I like it,
then
and
don't
we'll
watch
continue.
it. Like, just don't. Like, it's really one of those things where it's like, it's okay to not like something. Like, if people didn't like the sequel series, then that's fine. You don't have to watch them. You still have to acknowledge the fact that they were there, and then that it was some other people do like them. So let them have their thing that they like. Like, I don't understand why we have to yuck everybody's yum. Like, just if you like the Acolyte, it's okay to like it. And guess what? Here at Gold Squadron Gaze, we like the Acolyte and we hope for a season 2.
Yeah, and I think it's this weird cultural thing to where like nuance is dead online. And part of nuance being dead is that there is this weird cultural thing to where somebody's enjoyment of a thing and the quality of a thing have to be like hand in hand. Like, if you personally didn't like a thing, it cannot be that the thing is not for you. It has to be that the thing is bad. And we saw this too. I'll bring this back a little bit to when the prequels were coming out, because the prequels were not made with adults in mind. They were made with kids in mind. And kids who saw the prequels, like us, really liked them because they were made for kids. But the adults at the time were like, this isn't my Star Wars. This is different. Fire George Lucas, etc., etc. Thing didn't appeal to me in the way that the original films did, so therefore Thing must be bad. And that has become the prominent mentality here, to where I didn't like this thing, and therefore, because I can't be wrong, I can't be incorrect, everyone must agree with me, or I am the problem. Or like, they think they're the problem when in reality, no, it's fine to not like something. But because of that, you have to find a way to make it bad. And then also we have this sort of toxic ecosystem online now of people that will feed into that. That it used to be that in the days the prequels were coming out, yeah, you would have message boards and things online, and you would have articles that were being written, mainstream publications, gonna mainstream publication. Fuck Forbes. Those guys are stupid. I don't know what's going on over there. Actually, no, I know what's going on over there. They fired a whole bunch of their staff and replaced them with AI. Allegedly. That's what I'm hearing. I cannot state that as an absolute fact for legal reasons, but that's what I heard about them. But you had all these things happening, but they were limited to like the shelves of your local video store or message boards you had to go look at online. Now, I mentioned earlier the people getting Facebook comment threads like articles and things shoved onto your feed because the algorithm has put it on there. This discourse is now front and center in a way that it has never been front and center before. And we saw it with the sequels, and we saw it with this current crop of TV shows. We're going to see it with the next crop of movies. It's going to continue forever and ever. I made the point in the pre-meeting, and you asked me to repeat it actually, that we were talking about why Skeleton Crew does some of the same things as the Acolyte, just in terms of its representation and all of that, but it's not getting the same level of vitriol that the Acolyte did. And I pointed out that Skeleton Crew, it is harder to market the grift because the Acolyte, we had months and months and months of the grifters were able to monetize the Acolyte really easily. It was really easy to do. Skeleton Crew is a little harder to monetize for your grift. And so everything keeps tying back to the Acolyte. Bradley, you made the point again in the pre-meeting when we were talking about this, that you saw a comment that was like using Skeleton Crew to bash the Acolyte. And that's the point where I said, the Acolyte is just the new Last Jedi. It's the thing you can put in your SEO to make your article or your video jump up in the rankings. And so now you're going to tie everything back to that, which is, it's having the same effect as The Last Jedi, which is all of these comments from these videos seep to Reddit. And when they seep to Reddit, they seep to Facebook comments. And when they seep to Facebook comments, somebody in real life sees those, their opinion gets validated, and then I have to hear about them at a party where I'm trying to get away from this nonsense, and my phone is off, and someone is parroting the exact same thing to me that I saw on Reddit 2 weeks ago. So that's what happens. It's unfortunate because I'm glad we waited to talk about the Acolyte for some of this to die down, just because it's really hard to talk about something like that has become the nexus in this online culture war. It's hard to talk about like what makes it good, where is it flawed, what could they improve upon, what could they have done different without inviting that swarm of people in who everything is an absolute. Everything must be either pure perfect with no issues whatsoever or the most boring garbage you've ever seen in your entire life. It cannot be anything else, which is extremely frustrating as a I wouldn't call us critics so much as media analyzers, but I'll broadly use the term critic. It's frustrating as a critic to know that everything you're going to say is going to be viewed through that lens.
And it sucks too because like unfortunately, I think that the Acolyte coming out when it did is a mixture of just bad timing because like our political climate is just so fucking awful. The whole, weaponization of the word woke is like this era was just a bad time for this type of media to come out, unfortunately, because of just the amount of women that were in this project, the amount of people of color, like just there's so many like things that are great about this show that they have done, I think, successfully that I don't think is what a certain group of people would consider pandering or wokeness or whatever terminology you want to use. I think they did it.
It was previously PC. It was PC culture.
Right.
10 years ago, it was we want to be politically correct. And now it's we want to be woke.
Right. And it sucks because I think that the actors that were in this don't deserve the hate. No one does. I mean, in any form of anything, in any form of media, no one deserves to be criticized online for literally nothing else other than being a woman of color. Like that's literally all this is about. It's not about like their acting skills or the writing of the show. Like I think genuinely people are taking that and using that as an excuse. They're saying like, oh well, the acting is bad, so therefore you can't have a woman of color as an actor because she's not going to be a good actor. Like, no, that you can't make those conclusions because that doesn't equate to each other. Like, I think the problem is we're using those as excuses to be racist and just be annoying in general. And the problem is you just can't, like, that's just not true. And unfortunately, this did come out when it did. And I genuinely believe, like, if we had gotten this show, like, I hate to say, if we got in this show around the prequels, people would have been just as awful to it.
Oh, for sure. Like we saw what happened to Jake Lloyd and Ahmad Best and all that. Yeah. But we also saw what happened to like Daisy Ridley and Kelly Marie Tran and John Boyega during the sequels. So no, and this is something I've been trying to sort of explain to people as we've gone along with regards to like, why was the Acolyte so vitriolic online? And it is in large part because it was centered in this online culture war to where it was a target that people could very easily go after in order to hide their racism, hide their sexism, hide their homophobia, all of that. And we saw it also when Obi-Wan Kenobi came out with what happened to Moses Ingram after Obi-Wan Kenobi came out. People were just being fucking racist. But they could hide it by being like, no, it's the show is woke, or the show is bad writing, or the show is bad acting, which is utterly ridiculous. And again, like, we can't have any sort of nuanced conversation without knowing that there's going to be people out there who are going to be like, oh no, there's just the show is bad because Disney went woke. And I'm like, okay, so we can't talk about any of this at all in any meaningful way. It goes back to that generalizing. You made the point earlier about generalizing, and I do think a lot of the conversation about the Acolyte has been a lot of people trying to boil down what is a complex topic into generalizations and going after the acting, going after the writing, and just broadly saying it's bad is a very easy generalization to make. I've heard criticisms of The Acolyte that I don't agree with, but are very specific criticisms that show me that the person who is making them has watched and understood the show and was coming at it like one of them I heard was that the character of Vernestra is so radically different from her book character that, you know, the writing of her was not good because she was so radically different. I don't agree with this criticism. However, I understand why it was made. I understand it's coming from a good faith place. And so I'll entertain that conversation. Well, why does this person think that Vernestra's character is so different from the books versus why might it be different than the books? Why might they have made that choice? Does it work? Does the show explain enough why Vernestra, the character, is different here than she was when we met her at 16? And after everything she's been through in the High Republic series, which Bradley has not yet consumed, but knows a little bit about as a result of the show. I don't know. It's been difficult to talk about the show in any metric. And it's a shame because I think it is a show worth talking about. I think, again, going back to what I said about The Acolyte is just The Last Jedi again. The Last Jedi is probably one of the more interesting of the sequel film. I think it's the most interesting of the sequel films.
And I hate to say it, it's actually probably my favorite out of the three.
It is my favorite Star Wars movie.
I don't want to get attacked, period. But you know, I think it's my favorite. Well, because
I get attacked for two distinct things. I get attacked for saying Last Jedi is my favorite of all the Star Wars movies, not the best one, just my favorite. And I also get attacked for saying The Rise of Skywalker is not as bad as everyone thinks it is. It's actually pretty good. The script of Rise of Skywalker will provide you the information you need, and the visuals will provide you the information you need. Is it convoluted? Yes. But is it all there? No. And also, that dagger is not ancient. Nowhere in the movie do they say that it's ancient. Y'all need to stop cornering me at parties to tell me that The Rise of Skywalker is bad, because they can't explain why the ancient dagger leads to the Death Star ruins. It's not ancient. You guys just inserted that in your brain because they found it randomly in a cave. They found it on the dead body of a guy who has only been there a couple of years. Why is he just a skeleton? Did we not notice the giant snake monster? Did we not notice that part? Anyway, this
So put a
we
pin in
cannot
that theory
we
because
cannot
we'll
we
talk about that at
cannot
some
do the
point.
Rise of Skywalker. Yeah, I badly want to do. If we have 9 weeks free at some point, I badly want to do the sequels.
What I think one day we will, because I agree with you. Like there is, I think there's gonna be a time and place to where we can genuinely critique the sequel series. I do want to sit back. I do want to rewatch the series again. I want to like really give it the full like time it deserves. And I think you're right. Like 9 weeks, I think we could really like. Well, honestly,
I
yeah,
wanna do it as a series at some
yeah,
point.
for sure.
So FYI, audience, that is on my bingo card. I do want to do that at some point, depending on the slowdown schedules of shows.
Correct.
So we will give those the Rogue One treatment. But I also think that like the Acolyte, I liked the Acolyte when I first watched it. There were some issues I had with it, and I couldn't quite put my finger on them until we covered them. But broadly, I would say the Acolyte is unique as far as shows that we've covered, in that I won't say I came out of it liking it more, but I came out of it appreciating it more and understanding it more when we
That's
really
fair.
dived in.
That's fair. Because yeah, like normally when we go over these shows again, you're like, oh, I didn't really like it the first time, or I didn't appreciate it the first time. And then now when we go back, I think you said that with Ahsoka. You said, oh,
Ahsoka was
well,
the big one that I'm like,
right, yeah,
I actively do not like the back half of this show when I
right.
first watched it. Like, I just shut up about it online because I was like, I don't like this. And then we had to go in and cover it and really dig into the details and the character arcs before I could learn to be like, oh, this is quite well made. I do like this.
Yeah, I think I have a similar feeling towards the Acolyte. I think what my thought process was the first time I watched it was, oh, this is just fun. Like it's nothing's important about it inherently because it doesn't really connect to anything else because it is so far in the past. And so I went in going, well, this will just be a fun, cool thing. And I still believe that. I still believe that it's just a fun, cool thing and you can appreciate it for just being a romp, that took place a couple hundred years before the movies take place, and and if you want to continue just having that opinion, then that's great. I think that's perfect for that. After we've reviewed it, I think I appreciate it more in that I just love the characters that have come out of this show so much more than when I first went in. I take it like the fact that some of the characters only get so much screen time and they're killed off so quickly, it hurts me now, like watching it back because I have refallen in love, like, and like actually wanted to know more about certain characters. Like, I love Yord, I love Jecki, like, I want more from them. I didn't know really much about Vernestra when we first started this. Now I want more from her. Like, I love Vernestra. The Stranger is the biggest one, obviously. Like, I want way more information on the Stranger. Like, I want a Stranger series. I want a Stranger's prequel. I want a Stranger's novel. I want a Stranger's comic book series. Like, I want, I want, if nothing ever happens out of the Acolyte ever again, they better fucking make Stranger content because that is all I want.
And I do know Manny Jacinto has been one of the most vocal advocates for continuing the story. That he was at Dragon Con when we were there. Sadly, we did not get to meet him when we were there, but he was there and he was talking about how like he really wants an Acolyte season 2. They're still like pushing for it. It's gonna be a hard sell, I think, because Disney, they've started to be a little more transparent as to why they didn't renew it, even though their reason makes no fucking sense. Because I did read the
I was
quote.
gonna say, you have the quote because I have the quote in front
I,
of
I
me.
read it, but do you want to read the quote so that I can be annoyed about it?
So this was an interview for Vulture that Alan Bergman, the co-chair of Disney Entertainment, did. And the question, I'm paraphrasing, was about the Acolyte, and the interviewer asked, "Why didn't you move forward with the second season? Can you give us a hint on how Skeleton Crew is doing?" Blah blah blah. And this is what he says, direct quote. He says, "So as it relates to the Acolyte, we were happy with our performance, but it wasn't where it needed to be given the cost structure of that title, quite frankly, to go and make a season 2. So that's the reason why we didn't do that." And then he goes on to say stuff about the Skeleton Crew and how they've seen some growth. And they said, we'll just have to see how that plays out because it's too soon to really make that decision for Skeleton Crew. But
So the show performance-wise did what you wanted.
Right.
But the cost structure, here's my thing, right? Because I do understand that it went massively over budget. That was part of the problem, that it did go massively over budget. However, there's a couple of other factors here. Number one, why are you pumping all this money into the Disney Plus shows if you don't really need to? Number one. And number two, if Disney Plus subscriptions and the subscription model and the ad model, that alone is not justifying the cost of some of these projects. Number two, why didn't you do more merchandise on the show then? Because you almost set it up to not make a lot of money off of this show. Because you didn't have the subscription numbers coming in, right? You didn't have people paying the ad-free tier or watching the ads.
Right.
That alone is not going to do it. And you didn't merchandise this show basically at all. Where exactly did you think the money was going to come from?
Yeah, I think something is happening at Disney Plus, because
I think so too. I think Chapek was a dumbass. And I think that what happened was they threw all these shows at the wall and they keep getting progressively more expensive. There was an absolutely bullshit article. Did you see this article from Forbes, who I made a comment about earlier?
No.
The title of the article was something like Disney spends like Andor season 2 is the most expensive show, and it shows that Disney has lost control of Star Wars. And I'm like, what? Because that continues. First of all, any of these conversations about the expensive Disney Plus shows continue to ignore the fact that Disney Plus shows being overtly expensive is a company-wide problem.
Right. That seems
they haven't lost control of Star Wars. They lost control of Disney Plus. All of these shows, the reason that a lot of them have been canceled and that they've pulled them off the platform for tax write-offs, pulled them back, like they're not making as many Marvel shows, they're not making as many Star Wars shows, is because they turned out to be ludicrously expensive to make. And you have to have those viewers. Percy Jackson was a great show. It cost so much money to make that show. But a lot of people got on Disney Plus just to watch Percy Jackson. And that's new IP that's central to Disney Plus.
I mean, take a look at what they did with Moana 2, right? I think that's a great example, because clearly that was meant to be a television show that they have converted last minute, really, into a 2-hour movie, basically. What the question is, like, why? Because like you've done something that would have been, what I'm assuming, 6 episodes at 30 minutes a piece, probably, and which it probably equates to a movie length anyway. But the criticism with Moana 2 that people rightly said was it feels like you took a TV show and cut it down into a movie, because there was missing character beats, there was missing character moments and things that, like, writing wise, that just didn't make sense, because they probably cut a lot out. My question is, like, if the Acolyte was so expensive, like, let's just say it was so fucking expensive, we went over budget, no one from Disney was like, hey, you're spending too much money, let's stop. My question is, then why did you not just make it a movie? If you genuinely were like, okay, well, the way we're going to make this story, to tell the Acolyte story, is to spend $300 million, or I don't even know how much it was, but let's just, argument's sake, then just make it a fucking movie. Like, or they could
have done, like, and this is something that I think they sort of explored doing, because I did watch the first 2 episodes in the theater.
Right.
And they were pretty good. I think part of the issue too is that with these streaming shows, they go direct to streaming, that they have no other revenue model. And this is something they ran into. They have no other revenue model for the show besides streaming. They can't rerun it to get ads. Like, this is another thing too, is like traditional TV. This is part of where the streaming model has failed. Traditional TV, something you could do with shows is you could rerun them. You'd rerun episodes. People who missed it the first time could watch it again, or you could watch it again if you wanted to. But also, more importantly, advertisers, who were your real consumers, advertisers are going to buy space on the rerun. So you're going to continue to be able to charge advertisers for those reruns. The culture of streaming now is such that you watch a show and it's done. You move on. The average consumer watches a show and then moves on to the next show. Most people don't rewatch shows multiple times as they go along. They watch it, they consume it, and then they move on because the streaming model incentivizes them to do that. And it also puts all this content at your fingertips. You can keep watching new stuff. You don't have to wait for the new stuff to be on or specifically seek it out. And yes, it's cheaper for consumers to have all of this like right at your fingertips. You don't have to buy all of these shows in order to consume them, or you don't have to buy these movies in order to consume them. But the flip side of this is there's no impetus to go back and watch a show after it has already aired. So you have to continue in order to monetize something. You have to really put a lot into like merchandise and tie-ins, and that's where the books come in and the comics come in and things like that. And I think the issue with the Acolyte is because it went so over budget that even though the show performed what they wanted, it couldn't justify that over budget price tag. I think if they had kept it on budget, that it would have justified that price tag to Disney, and we probably would have got the season 2. I think this is where these two things go kind of hand in hand. And I do think that they should have done more of an aggressive push. I think they should have had more merchandise. I think they should have had ways to monetize this outside of just watching in the Disney Plus to make up for that budget overage that they went. But they didn't. They just let it play out, and it performed exactly as they thought it was going to, and it couldn't justify how much it ballooned over budget as it went.
My only solution to this and still have a season 2 would be to like, I think if you were going to ever do a season 2 and they wanted to be like, okay, well, how are we going to justify that cost wise? Unfortunately, and I hate to say this because I don't think they should do this all the time, but just film it on the volume. Like, don't go anywhere. Don't do any on location shoots. Film everything on a set. The problem with the Acolyte, one of the problems with the Acolyte, which is, I don't think it's an actual problem, but I think financially wise,
financially,
most of it.
I know what you're about to say, and I think it's a thing we liked, but that financially turned out to be an issue.
Right. It's that it's filmed on location, right? Nothing, for the most part, the Acolyte is not filmed on a set. I mean, yes, there are 1 or 2 episodes that are genuine sets that they filmed on, but like a lot of it like is just filmed on a beach somewhere. They did a lot of good stuff. I think that's what makes the show look good, is that they did film it on location in all these really fantastic places. However, I mean, because I think it was British Columbia, like Canada, South Australia, like they did so many different places that like have all these tax rebates, and like, yeah, it makes sense to go film there and film on location for some of these places. But I could see why, like, well, now we're saying, oh, we're going to England, we're going to Wales, we're going to Australia, we're going to Canada, we're going to California. We're doing all these different company moves to go film these things, and that costs a lot of fucking money to do that. Travel,
you would
alone is a fuck. Yeah, exactly, because
you would be the person who would know how much it costs to fly a production crew out somewhere. I'm gonna say something, and I'm gonna take Andor. Andor is a prestige show, so I need people to understand Andor is a prestige show. The purpose of Andor is to demonstrate the absolute maximum that they can do, all cylinders firing off. They are going to try to get Emmys with this show. So we're going to take Andor and we're going to put it off to the side because it's its own thing. Nothing I'm about to say applies to it. It applies to everything else. I think part of the issue is that the executives on these Disney Plus shows approached a lot of them like films.
Yeah.
In terms of the producing. They didn't approach them, and this is a broad thing across all of streaming. It is not just Lucasfilm. It is everything across all of streaming. They approached it like a film, not like a TV show. TV shows have to deal with a longer runtime, and they're not going to make that box office money. So TV shows, one of the draws of TV as a company is that you're going to be able to get things a little bit cheaper. You're going to be able to cut more corners. You're going to be able to do things in a studio, or you're going to be able to do a Lower Decks episode, or you're going to be able to do a bottle episode, or you're going to be able to cut these corners in a way that you would not be able to cut them with a film. Because a film, all cylinders have to fire, especially a Star Wars film, especially a genre film like this. You have to be all cylinders firing. I just watched the original series of Star Trek. So I watched the original 3 seasons and then the movies, the original 6 movies. there's a marked difference between the productions of the TV shows and the productions of the movies. And if you are not listening to Holodeck Divas, I am going to highly recommend that everyone, even if you don't like Star Trek that much, go and listen to Holodeck Divas, because Chris is a fucking master at researching film production. This man can research how a Star Trek is made like no one else I've ever seen. We watched one of the movies together, and he's like an encyclopedia at this point of the TOS stuff that they covered. And he really delves into the 60s era production of the show and how they had budget issues with the show and the sets and all of that, and how Paramount was working with them, but also the movies, all 6 of the movies, where the budget got ridiculous and where they had to scale it down and where they had to make it work and how they had to do things to consider this, but also film production and TV production being very different animals and how you have to approach them different ways. And they're going to also translate to being different products. And so I highly recommend Holodeck Divas, if for no other reason than it is a very good masterclass at this point in film and TV production, an overview of how that will impact the final product. And bringing it around, I think that's part of what I'm starting to see with some of these shows. The shows that are continuing on in some form tend to be the shows that can keep under their budget. And when you watch the shows, you notice it. You know it. Like some of the stuff in, I'll call out Filoni specifically, the Filoni Favreau shows, they can look cheap at times. They really can. Like some of the wig work on Ahsoka, not great. There are some issues with the production, like the sets that they used for Ahsoka and some of the set pieces and some of how the episodes were written. But you can tell that they were written to keep things under budget. And they are cutting these corners. And my point is, as a consumer, I think that's excusable in TV. And I think that's one of the issues with the Disney Plus shows broadly overall. And looking at some of the Marvel shows too. Like, you and I both really liked Agatha All Along.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And one of the things that I liked about Agatha All Along is it felt like a fucking TV show. It felt like they wrote it in such a way that it's very contained. It's very like written to the production. Like they knew what they had. They wrote to it. They reused where they could. It works. It works really well, and it sacrifices nothing in the story. Also, Agatha All Along is so fucking good. I don't know where the show came from, but Jay Schaefer, you are a master at all of this.
I was going to say, give Jay a Star Wars show.
Give Jay Schaefer a Star Wars show, actually. Jay Schaefer would write a really fucking good Star Wars show. And there would be lesbians in it. God, that show was so gay, too. I loved it. I loved Agatha All Along.
I like how you said that. We literally just got lesbians in Skeleton Crew.
We did get lesbians in Skeleton Crew.
We'll talk about it when we get to it, but I want to point out we did technically get lesbians.
We do have lesbians in Skeleton Crew. They are there. They are present and actively being lesbians, and that is cool.
I love that. So I want to switch gears slightly. I want to talk about, so we kind of like to do this thing where we talk about what we want to see in season 2. Unfortunately, that is not the case this time around. So I'm going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to ask you how you would like to see this story continue. And then I'll give how I want to see the story continue, in what form, in what media. However, before I do that, I want to give you the upcoming, or things that are already out, other source material that is already related to the Acolyte that is planned or is out already.
Refresh us.
First thing that I believe is already out, let me just double check, make sure. Yes, it came out on September 4th, is the one-shot Kelnaka Marvel comic illustration.
That is written by our buddy Kevin Scott, who wrote Dooku Jedi Lost, writes a bunch of the High Republic books. I have read that comic. It is good.
Oh, you have? Okay, good. So there you go. So if you're really itching for more Acolyte stuff, like you can already read a Kelnaka comic book, which I'm glad, because he is probably the most underused character in the entire show. So I'm glad that they gave him his own comic, because that was...
Be advised, it will mildly spoil a plot point in the High Republic's Phase 1. I'm saying this to our listeners, not to Bradley, who every week sees a spoiler for the High Republic Phase 1 on the wall behind me.
So there you go. So keep that in mind. Next, well, here's some less plot things. There is a Star Wars: The Acolyte visual guide that Pablo Hidalgo is writing. Don't see a release date. Oh, it says June 17th. That'll come out. So if you really love like the art of, or you want like a visual guide, that'll be like a really cool thing that you can do, or you can purchase to let them know that you like the Acolyte and that you want more from it. That's one thing. The other thing is the art of. So there's going to be the visual guide that Pablo Hidalgo is writing, and then the art of the Acolyte, which looks like that one comes out October 7th. So that's going to be written by Kristen Baver. Don't know if you know that name. And Leslie Headland is doing the forward.
I do. Kristen Baver has put together a couple of the art books. Kristen Baver's who I believe does This Week in Star Wars.
That's right. Okay, I knew the name
That's
sounded
who that
familiar,
is.
and I couldn't quite place it in my brain.
Kristen
But that's
Baver
okay. Yes,
does This Week in Star Wars.
love that for her. Okay, great.
And she's put together a couple of the art books. Notably, she's put together the Art of the High Republic book.
And then now for the actual plot things. So it looks like first up will be the novel Wayseeker by Justina Ireland. That should come out on May 6th of next year. That'll follow I guess, the story of Vernestra and Indara. I don't know what the actual plot
I don't
is.
really know anything about it.
We won't get
mild
into that
spoilers for the High Republic Publishing Initiative. I did mention that in the actual coverage of the show. Vernestra does become a Wayseeker at one point.
There you go. So maybe that's what that plot's for. By the way, update on the cover art for this book that we've talked about.
Did they change it?
Well, it does say so. They still have the clearly AI'd faces onto the body.
I don't think they're AI'd. I think they're just photoshopped.
Oof. Well, then they're bad Photoshop. I mean, it's honestly, I would say that like Vernestra's isn't as bad. Although, if you look really closely, her lip looks really fucked up for some reason, and I don't know why.
Listen, I'm gonna need everybody to Google. Go on your preferred search platform and search for the covers of the Jedi Apprentice and Jedi Quest books, the original middle grade novels, most of them by Jude Watson. Google the covers of these books. Just if everybody wants a little funny piece of Star Wars history, Google these covers.
I say all that to say there's a picture on Wikipedia where it does have the terribly photoshopped image and it does say cover not final. So that does mean there can be, theoretically, there could be a change.
Please, God.
I swear to God, if they don't change it, I'm going to write Justina Ireland. I'm going to be like, please,
Justina,
do
don't write
your
Justina.
power.
Justina Ireland has nothing to do with the cover.
No, I know she doesn't have anything to do with it. I want to say, whatever power you do have, please tell them to fix.
None.
Also, I just saw this on Wikipedia. Fun fact, the development code name for the Wayseeker book was Gleek. I just thought that was
God.
I just thought that's hilarious, by the way.
What's the last thing that I know is coming out?
So the other thing is also another novel. This one is a young adult novel. So to preference, Wayseeker is supposed to be an adult novel. This is going to be a young adult novel called The Crystal Crown, which is going to follow, it looks like Jecki and Yord's storyline.
Correct.
So that should be an interesting, again, I don't know what the thing is going to be, but the thing that is going to be by Tessa Gratton. Is the author. So I don't know.
Tessa Gratton has written some absolutely banger books for the High Republic Phase 2.
Okay. So there you go. And now, in looking at either the temporary cover or the actual cover for this novel, this one seems to be more stylistically Jecki and Yord. Like there's an art style to it. So I'm not going to knock it for not looking good because it's clearly like they look painted or like it's some kind of like it looks actually like they meant to make it look a certain way. The other one looks like someone just cobbled together a cover and I don't know.
Okay, Bradley. We need to move on from the cover. So the question at hand is,
yes,
what form would I like to see the Acolyte continue? Correct. Here are the things we've already seen. And also maybe I think part 1 was what other stuff we might want to see.
Yeah, like, okay, if you had, I'm not giving you a limit. So you can, funds don't matter, marketing doesn't matter, nothing matters. You can have it in any form you want. It doesn't have to matter about money or anything, because clearly that's the issue. Money doesn't have to be an issue to you. So do you want to see a comic? Do you want to see a show? Do you want to see a movie? Do you want to see a novel? More novels than that we're already getting? And what would they be about?
I would like to see a hmm. I think I would like to see a movie about the witches of Brindok prior to arriving on Brindok.
Okay.
I want to know what happened there. I think there's enough story that you could tell a movie length, but I would like to know how they ended up on Brindok, what the situation was there. Because I feel like that is one of the big pieces of context that we are missing.
So you
We
want a
know
mother
that
and a
they,
say a prequel.
yes,
Got it.
we know that they claim they were persecuted, and I do believe that to an extent, but I know there's more fucking nuance to this situation that they're not telling us.
Agree.
What about you, Bradley? What's a piece of supplemental material that you would like to see for this show?
Oh, that's it. That's all you need. You just need a witch movie and then you're good.
I just need a witch movie. I would like to see a Soul prequel, like maybe as a book, because I think that part of the issue is Soul's not a super great guy in the show.
Right.
But he has this like inherent goodness to him. And I'm curious how we got from like the inherent goodness in him to being so attached to people. Like, why was this not addressed when he was a kid the same way it was addressed with everyone else?
I'm with you on that. I think a soul novel would be fantastic. I'm surprised, actually, out of the two novels that we got. Don't get me wrong, a Yord and Jackie novel, that's all I wanted. And then a Vernestra novel within Indara is
So
the other thing I really wanted.
part of the thing you have to keep in mind too is that not Tessa, Justina created Vernestra Rowe.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Justina Ireland created the character of Vernestra Rowe. She wrote basically all the Vernestra Rowe content in phase 1
Interesting.
of the High Republic.
So what you're saying is it's in good hands.
It's in great hands. If anybody's going to explain how Vernestra like got from the end of the High Republic to where she is in the Acolyte, it's going to be the woman who created her.
So for my supplemental content that I would want to see, I kind of have two-ish things, three-ish things. My first thing obviously is I would just, I mean, if budget wasn't an issue, I would just go ahead and do a season 2. I think just at least a 2 and a 3. Those are, I think the Acolyte would work well, I think, as a 3-season show. I think you really do need to tell. The second season would be more so the stranger's story. We would see his flashbacks, his story, why he is the way he is, where him and Vernestra connect, all that good stuff. I need that content. Like, that's desperately what I need, is his backstory. And I think that would be so great to see. And then I think a third season would be fantastic for showing where these two characters, Osha and the stranger, end up, like what, and their solid like ending to cement the furtherness of the prequels, right? Like I want to see like what they do and what they cement in the galaxy to create way for more, Palpatine stuff. And just like as like a fun like thing I want to see on the other side of that, it's hard because there's so many good characters in this. I think they're already kind of giving us kind of like the novels that I don't know. I think just as like a fun thing, I would love to have some kind of, maybe not including Jackie. I think I would want like a Yord story where he gets to like become a knight, something like that. Like I want to see maybe his trials or something, like I don't know, something more Yord related, because I think we need more of him. Why not?
We get it, Bradley. You want to fuck Yord.
So this is a great time to plug both fan fictions that I
Oh
wrote.
boy. Oh
Uh,
yes, which disclosure, you sent them to me earlier this week. As of this episode, I had not had a chance to read them.
okay, so I want to preface this by saying the first one I wrote as a joke, because we made a joke an
On
episode
the
or two
last
back
episode.
on the last
And then
episode.
Bradley surprised me. So next week, tune into our skeleton crew. No, next week, tune
No,
into our Q&A. And we
that's
will
right.
also be talking about the fan fiction that Bradley went and fucking wrote about your...
I did. I did a Yord and Mog fanfic for
Which
just for shits and giggles.
if you don't know what the fuck, like, why that's a thing, listen to our last episode. It
And
will
then
explain.
and then I will say, I was so impressed with myself that I was able to write that fan fiction. I decided to write another one about Yord, except this was not I will say the other one's pretty PG. Let's just say that. This one is not PG. I wrote another one about Yord that is X-rated. And it is featuring the stranger, and
Oh.
it is called Sleeping with the Stranger. So, or
Oh,
Sleeping with a Stranger, I think is what I called it.
I'm so excited to read these. I haven't had a chance. I didn't have a chance to this week, but if you tune in for I've kind of already said what it is, but our 201 episode special, we will talk about the ways in which we have changed as a result of making Gold Squadron gays. And one of them is Bradley wrote fan fiction about yours.
So, Charles, do you have any final thoughts on The Acolyte as we come to a close?
I really do think that if they continue it, it should be a movie. But my final thoughts about it are that the show's good. It really needed a second season. I understand why it's not getting one, but that doesn't change the fact that the story does need to continue in some form. And I remain hopeful and optimistic that they will. That they are going to get some way to continue the story somewhere down the road, but it might not be for a while. And I think the most important thing we can do is, push back against the narratives that, the Acolyte's just bad writing and bad acting and it's this linchpin in the culture war thing. Push back against that, but also like read the books, read the comic, buy Acolyte merch from official sources, like demonstrate to the Walt Disney Company that there is money in this property and they will put money in this property. So that's kind of my final thoughts on it. I'm just glad to be done with it. It's a lot. Bradley, what about you? Final thoughts?
No, I agree with you. I think you're right. I think a movie would probably be a really great way to kind of tie up the stuff that they wanted to tie up.
You could call it The Apprentice.
You could call it Manny Jacinto, the sex movie. But whatever you want to call it, Charles, is up to you. Anyway, so no, I'm just kidding. But I think that I enjoy it. And I think it's such a great, fun time to have with Star Wars. If you really genuinely like, I think all the fighting is great. I thought the characters were fantastic. I love the set design. I love the character design. I mean, there's just so many fun things about it. And I think it was such an enjoyable time. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to rewatch it. It's one of those things that you can go back and rewatch because now that I know that it has a definitive ending and it is kind of its own thing, you can kind of watch it in its own capacity and just be like, oh, yep, that was like a fun time. Like I had a good time watching that and then just enjoy it for what it is. And if we never get anything ever again, then at least, we'll have Manny's arms to remember us by.
At least I'll always remember Manny Jacinto's glorious, glorious shoulders.
I mean, if I take away anything from The Acolyte, it's damn, he has a great body. But other than that, it was a fun time. And yeah, I'm excited to see where we go from here.
And where are we going from here, Bradley?
Well, you've multiple times have mentioned this. Next week, we will be doing a Q&A episode. Just
yes,
not Star Wars related. This is a Bradley and Charles related episode.
About the show. Yes, we are celebrating our 200th episode. Technically, we're doing it at our 201 because we wanted to end the Acolyte. But if you ever had any questions about Star Wars, about us, about this show that you wanted to ask us, you can email them to our email, goldsquadrongays@gmail.com. You can send them to me directly. You can send them to any of our social media. We are on Instagram, BlueSky, TikTok for the moment. We are also on Threads, so you can message us any of those places. Do not message us on Twitter. I will not get it. Our Twitter is archived. I do not check it. I don't even have the app on my phone anymore.
There you go. Me too.
So if you send it to Twitter, we're not going to answer it. Send it to BlueSky, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, or our email box, or to me directly. And we will endeavor to answer them. So we're going to celebrate 200 episodes of this show.
I love that.
Then what are we doing after that, Bradley? Taking a week off?
We'll take a week off, just why not? And then we'll jump into Skeleton Crew because it should be wrapping up about the time we do that. I'm looking at my schedule now, so we'll do our 201 episode, celebrating our 200 episodes on the 6th, and then Skeleton Crew should be wrapping up the following week. So the week that we take off, that'll be the finale for Skeleton Crew, and then the following week after that, we'll jump right in. We're
doing it.
We'll do all the Skeleton Crew. That should take us through March, and then God help us because we're almost at Celebration, and who knows what we'll do in the interim time. But for the most part, Skeleton Crew is all we can definitively say we're doing for the beginning of this year, because I mean, you know, we'll see, and obviously Andor, but we'll have to get into the Andor schedule once we get to Andor.
Yes, our middle part of the year is going to be very tight because we're doing Andor and then we're doing something else that is currently a surprise. That is not a TV show. We're going to do a couple of weeks of something I guarantee you've heard about, but have never actually read. So we're going to dive into that, but that's going to be pretty jam-packed. But yeah, it's going to be Q&A episode, take a week off, Skeleton Crew, and then we're just going to kind of see what happens between then and Celebration.
There you go.
This episode is already running long, so I'm going to do the pluggables as quickly as possible. You can find a bunch of shows that Bradley worked on. Please watch them so that he can continue to be employed on Peacock and Bravo, including such shows as Married to Medicine, Temptation Island, The Circle on Netflix, and Queen's Court. You can also find me on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast, For Light and Dice, which is also set in the High Republic era. You can also just go to my social media at CWRogers6 everywhere, and you can find links to the books that I write and the other things that I do over on them. And Bradley, you can finally close out the Acolyte. Please run our socials. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com to let us know. And you can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Gold Squadron Gaze. You can also find us on YouTube at our Gold Squadron Gaze YouTube channel, where we post full episodes of this show. Finally, if you liked the show, don't forget to rate us and give us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That allows other people to find our show. As always, thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze, and we'll see you next week.